dropping into this moment, I'm awesome. I just am. I'm awesome not because I'm superhuman or perfect, because I'm none of those things. I just have come to understand that who I am, not who you think I am, not what they say about me, just who I am, I have no question about it. So I feel pretty good in this skin.
See, we're collecting money to buy Ferris Bueller a new kidney. They run about 50 G's or so, so if you could help out.
Go piss up a flagpole.
I'm sorry?
You should be.
Hey!
Jennifer Grey landed her breakout role in the classic 1986 comedy Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And the following year, she had the time of her life playing Frances Baby Houseman in the beloved romantic drama Dirty Dancing.
I'm scared of walking out of this room and never feeling the rest of my whole life the way I feel when I'm with you.
Today, the 62-year-old actress is about to publish her first book, Out of the Corner, which will be released May 3rd. The deeply personal memoir begins with a brave prologue, which details the devastating fallout from Jennifer's early 90s rhinoplasty.
When you talk about the placement of that rhinoplasty story being in the prologue, that is solely from my editor, Barbara Jones. It was her genius, because I'd basically written 500 pages before anyone looked at it, and I just didn't know how to put it together. And I knew that I wanted to start off the book with something scary or dark, and then just slingshot back to it. Let me just tell you, this is how I got here. And I thought, well, how did I ever think of doing anything else first? Because I've had a lot of very dramatic things happen in my life, so I was like picking through them, but nothing could have touched this one. It was just bizarre, let's just put it that way. It was freaking bizarre. It was like an episode of The Twilight Zone, and I was inside it and I couldn't get out for decades. And I was thinking, I'm so tired of being misunderstood and reduced. The reductive nature of people's judgment, or whatever they're projecting onto me of their own insecurity, or that they related to me as a girl with an imperfect nose or a Jewish nose or not totally pretty enough to be a movie star, that I would dare to do that, would made them feel like I was doing something to them. I don't know what the psychology of it was, but it was relentless, and I was traumatized by it. When I decided, am I gonna spend the rest of my life trying to convince strangers that I don't know who I am and what kind of a human being I am, even though they're accusing me of being someone who's addicted to the knife or self-sabotaging? I'm self-sabotaging, don't get me wrong, just not that way. You know, mine's much more of like the silent, invisible, version. It's much more in my head. But that I would disfigure myself or be like, unable to be satisfied, it's not my story. I actually never wanted the nose job in the first place. And that really offended me, that they projected onto me that I didn't like how I looked. I loved how I looked. I didn't have to look at myself. I just felt beautiful. And it made me feel like, dude, there's nothing wrong with how I am, except I couldn't get a job. I'd become famous and then I couldn't get a job. And so I fought it. So it was a little bit of a triple trigger. And so I finally got to really say, I'm done. I'm done trying to define myself, to, explain myself, defend myself. I'm just gonna give up. And people can think whatever they want anyway, because they're going to.
Thank God you're all right. We've been worried sick about you.
Out of the Corner also delves into Jennifer's relationship with her Ferris Bueller's Day Off co-star, Matthew Broderick.
I learned so many things about myself from my relationship with Matthew Broderick. I mean, first of all, we were really young. Like, we were in our mid-20s when we got together. And from where I sit now, it's pretty young. And we were, I don't know, I can only speak for myself. I was really in love with him. And I was, with a guy whose star had just, he was in such a high moment of his career because he had done War Games before I met him, and he'd won the Tony, and he was just this genius, smart, funny, cute. I don't know, there was just something so Jewish in New York about him that I just felt like, you know, when you read a little bit more about my family, it felt like home, okay? And all that that entails. And, you know, you keep reading, you'll figure out a little bit more. But there is, my feeling about him is love. My feeling about him is love, and I see the ways in which, because throughout the book, I don't include any story about anyone that's not completely germane to my journey. Because my journey is, it's a hero's journey. Like, it is not a sad story. But what I needed to walk through to become myself was gnarly. It was gnarly, and there's nothing bad about him. He is my choice. He is who I chose. We do what we want to do.
In August 1987, roughly 2 weeks before the premiere of Dirty Dancing, Jennifer and Matthew were involved in a tragic car accident in Northern Ireland that took the lives of 2 women.
There was some very, very heavy stuff that went down that changed my life forever, and there was no one to blame. And many people might think that I'm here to, you know, tell some long-held secret. None of that's, it's just, we had an accident. It was a pure and simple accident that was tragic. And it had very serious, traumatic, lasting effects on, I'm sure, Matthew and the family of the other women and me. So we learn, we know that this is now part of our story. My story is different than Matthew's, and I love him today. And the way I loved him is, to me, I don't know, I have such fondness and warmth, and yet at the same time told my story and owned my story as I remember it, trying as hard as I could every page to be a just God of the page.
The title, Out of the Corner, is, of course, inspired by the iconic line from Dirty Dancing.
Nobody puts baby in a corner. Come on.
So, naturally, Jennifer shares many of her memories from the set of the surprise hit of 1987.
Making Dirty Dancing, unless you were there, you can't even believe how much went wrong and how many things were just stacked against its success. It was a tiny, tiny micro-budget movie before low-budget movies were cool. And we had this tiny budget, and we had this sweet story, and we went out there to shoot it. It was supposed to be the summer, but we couldn't afford to go there because the guests were there, so we had to wait till the fall, and then the leaves were changing, and we were spray painting the leaves green because it was supposed to be summer, and then it was freezing when we were in the lake, and then, I mean, it was just every single thing that could go wrong went wrong. And I think something really I don't think, I have a very strong opinion about this. From my experience growing up with watching my dad doing cabaret, doing all sorts of any work that he does, it's always fraught. And when a job is fraught and there are problems and you don't have money to fix everything, it's very down and dirty. And art is like that. Art is really necessity being the mother of invention, and it brings out, it's almost like things need to be so hot with anxiety and stress that it can mold the iron to be in a different configuration. And that heat is creativity. And when everybody's in it and everybody is barely surviving, there's just a different energy, and there is so much love on that movie. But it was very, very low expectations by the end.
Despite those low expectations, the film turned its modest $6 million budget into nearly $215 million at the box office, largely because of the on-screen chemistry between Jennifer and her co-star, Patrick Swayze. But in her book, Jennifer reveals on set it was actually their animosity that made the movie work.
I was cast first, and I thought the part of Johnny Castle was going to be some swarthy young Latin New Yorker dangerous type. not this guy that I just did Red Dawn with from Texas and who's, was really bossy and played pranks, and I just felt like he wasn't, I was scared. I was scared because it was my first lead, and I wanted to make sure it was gonna really work, and I knew that I had no chemistry with him, and I knew that I didn't really feel like he was my cup of tea. And I just thought, well, he's very attractive, he's very talented, but I'd had some funky times with him that were making me very, very unsure if that was going to be a match.
Don't put your heel down.
I
Just stay
didn't.
on the toe.
And I wanted it to work, and I wanted to have chemistry, and I knew there was no chemistry between us, but there was energy between us. And I believe that energy, especially if it's two intense people, maybe even at odds with each other or something's up, is hotter than two people who are just gaga for each other. Because the story worked us. It was all working for us, even though it felt like an obstacle.
Out of the Corner promises to be a beautiful, close-to-the-bone account of Jennifer's life, and writing such an intimate memoir could not have been easy. But today, she says the process has actually helped her become more comfortable in her own skin.
I believe that in writing the book, I was able to really unpack all of the messages that I have either intuited or remember receiving about my worth. I just have come to understand that who I am, not who you think I am, not what they say about me, just who I am, I have no question about it, so I feel pretty good in this skin. And that's not to say that that doesn't change as often as the weather. It's not like I brushed my teeth and they stay brushed. It's a daily practice. Too much time in my life, in my opinion, our world is spent criticizing and aiming for this perfection that is unattainable by anybody. And if you get it for a second, it's not sustainable because it's not real. There's this perfection of imperfection, which I have come to think of my whole book. Everything about this book launch, the amount of pressure that everything has to be perfect and it has to be loved and no, It's like everything else. It just is. And that's it.